Marc Gasol is a Grizzlies legend. I'll give you a moment here to tell me that that's an oxymoron, that the Grizzlies are a new and not very successful franchise, so saying Grizzlies legend is like saying jumbo shrimp. Go ahead, get it out of your system. Okay, back to Marc. The Memphis Grizzlies were quite good while Marc Gasol was their star, and what a star he was. 3 All-Star teams and a first-team All-NBA selection, 1 Defensive Player of the Year award, and a long run of consistent, exciting playoff contention. This was a franchise-defining era of Memphis basketball, the grit and grind years, and among all these local legends, these Grizzlies for life, Marc Gasol was arguably the best player. Then, late in his career, Gasol got dealt to Toronto and promptly participated in the greatest moment in that franchise's young history. Add in all the medals Gasol won competing for Spain in international competition, and you have a hell of a player. Like way greater than a lot of people expected, and remarkably close in greatness to Marc's older brother, Hall of Famer Pau Gasol. And actually, that's where we should start. Let's meet some other earlier versions of Marc Gasol in the Prism, because people did not see this coming. Hey, real quick, Secret Base is on Patreon. For a few bucks a month, you can see a lot more stuff than you'd get from just subscribing to our YouTube. Okay, anyway. A lot of NBA fans heard Marc Gasol's name for the first time on February 1st, 2008, the date of a notorious, history-shifting NBA trade. The LA Lakers, fearful that Kobe Bryant might leave town if they didn't find him a new co-star, shocked the league by completing a trade for Pau Gasol, an extremely productive center from Spain entering his prime with the Memphis Grizzlies. In exchange for one of the best big men on earth, the top scorer in franchise history to that date, a future Hall of Famer who'd go on to win 2 titles with Kobe in LA, the Grizzlies got... The Memphis commercial appeal was just like, huh? They saw minimal talent and minimal potential in the return package from the Lakers. Their columnist called the trade return from LA flotsam. This is just a big-ass thumbs down. The trade was scandalous. It was a steal. Steve Kerr recalls thinking the Grizzlies traded Pau for nothing. Greg Popovich called it beyond comprehension and wished he had the authority to veto it. Here was one of the league's mightiest legacy teams somehow snatching an elite player from a sad, dumb franchise. They got him for nothing. Of course, the Grizzlies didn't accept literally nothing in return for their best player. It was just that fans, media, and even executives had little regard for, and in some cases, little knowledge of the players Memphis got in return. The picks and rights and whatnot didn't change anyone's mind. Well, deep down that list of odds and ends was a familiar name. Gasol. Yes, it turned out there was another Gasol, and the Lakers held his draft rights. The Grizzlies traded Pau for his own brother, a, quote, second-round pick who will almost certainly be dealt. So this was, for many, an introduction to Marc Gasol. He was nothing. He was nobody. At best, he was a piece to be traded again. The mere fact of his existence was a novelty. Pau's got a brother, tucked between the lines of a travesty. Okay, so who actually was Marc Gasol? It helps to first understand Pau's trajectory up to that point. Pau Gasol was an outstanding, decorated player in Spain playing for FC Barcelona. He got picked 3rd in the 2001 NBA draft and ended up with the Grizzlies, who were in the process of moving from Vancouver to Memphis. And, just like the franchise itself, Pau's whole family relocated, in their case from Catalonia to Memphis. While Pau ascended as a Grizzly, leading scorer, Rookie of the Year, All-Star, the Gasols found their own footing in their new home. His parents pursued jobs in the medical fields, and his younger brother, Marc, enrolled in high school. Marc dominated for the Lausanne basketball team, but that's not saying much. He was much bigger than everyone, and this was a small private school, a major downgrade talent-wise from competition he might have faced back home. Marc didn't give much thought to his fitness because he didn't have to. He behaved like an ordinary, rapidly growing teenaged boy, not like someone training to become an elite athlete. And we have none other than NBA legend Jerry West, whose son was a friend and teammate of Marc's, as a witness to this era. But because of his big brother, Marc had every opportunity to observe the discipline of NBA players and decided he wanted to give it a shot. Instead of playing in the NCAA, where teams weren't that interested in him anyway, 19-year-old Marc left his family behind to return to Barcelona, where, honestly, the team wasn't that interested in him. Marc rode the bench for FC Barcelona, seeing only modest increases in playing time over 3 seasons from 2003 to 2006. It took some lucky and unlucky breaks for Marc Gasol to level up, and hard work, of course. 2006 was a FIBA World Cup year. Spain did not include Marc Gasol on their initial World Cup roster. He wasn't supposed to be in this photo. But then, big man Fran Vázquez hurt his back, so Spain called Marc as a replacement. A lot of people thought it was a favor to Pau. But Marc, under strict instructions to work on his fitness, proved himself a solid bench contributor. When Pau went down with a foot injury before the championship game, Marc stepped up in his stead to help Spain take home gold. Good timing. Marc's expiring contract with Barca had left him in a bit of a professional no man's land until that World Cup breakout regenerated interest. He spent the next season with a less excellent pro club, Girona, that represented the perfect opportunity for Marc to stand out. Gasol led Girona to a little hardware in 2007, then entered the NBA draft simply because his eligibility was about to expire. Marc still was not regarded that highly as an NBA prospect, and showed no interest in improving his reputation. He didn't work out for any teams, and he didn't report for training camp after the Lakers snagged him with a mid-second round pick. Marc stayed with Girona for the 2007-08 season, which was his best to date as a pro. And, in the middle of that breakout season, his rights got traded to Memphis. Back in the US, the trade was a travesty, and the Grizzlies were miserable without Pau, finishing the 2008 season with 60 losses. People were still mad about Pau's exit, not necessarily excited by the potential addition of his obscure younger brother, and not necessarily moved by the Grizzlies touting their interest in signing the lesser Gasol. Marc mulled not accepting the Grizzlies' offer. I suspect he wouldn't have even considered crossing the ocean for a team besides the one in his adopted home city, because the money was not going to be as good in the NBA. But indeed, he was the rare foreign-born, foreign-employed player who could become closer to his family by joining the NBA team with his rights. But things were going really well in Spain, and the money would be better, at least in the short term. Ultimately, Marc accepted the Grizzlies' offer. That meant reuniting with his family, but it also meant picking up where Pau left off. Marc would have to step out from his brother's shadow. In one respect, that was quite daunting. Pau had become the top scorer in franchise history and given the Grizzlies their winningest seasons to date. In other respects, the comparison to Pau offered motivation and even validation. As a sort of gangly youngster, Pau's mobility and finesse helped make him great, but sometimes drew the ire of fans who perceived him as weak or soft or non-confrontational, not a traditional, tough, overpowering big man. No such problem for Marc. Even as a rookie, Marc made very clear that watching him play would be a very different Gasol experience. While not at all lacking in finesse, Marc was willing to move more like a traditional center. He rebounded, he blocked shots, he scored down low. If he had to fight somebody, he would fight somebody. Marc became Memphis's starting center right out of the gates and drew positive attention for his style of play, not just from fans, but from teammates who had played beside his older brother. His distinct style seemed more appealing. None of that meant Marc was better than Pau, but between watching Marc in the 2008 Olympics and now in the NBA, fellow players were coming to realize that this dude was quite good in his own right. He just needed sharpening. Whereas Pau spent his early Grizzly years adding strength, Marc needed conditioning, and after his rookie season, he went for it. Marc spent the summer of 2009 lugging weights up and down the hills of Catalonia, to the point that the Grizzlies staff who visited him there were like, "Wait, is that you or Pau?" So Marc's body changed, but his distinct style remained, and it felt more and more like a match with the rest of the roster, if not the whole city. Like the miserable sacrifice of Pau was an organ donation to make room for his better-fitting brother. 2010 saw improvement for both player and team. The Grizzlies went from deep lottery to almost making the playoffs. 2011 crystallized an identity: grit and grind. Newcomer Tony Allen was the first to say it out loud, but it was embodied by the whole team, and Marc especially. They were tough, pugnacious, defense-minded, and for the first time basically ever, very good. Good enough to pull off a historic first-round upset of the 1-seed San Antonio Spurs. Good enough that when they eventually fell in the second round against the OKC Thunder, fans greeted their defeated Grizzlies at the airport. In his adopted home city, for a fan base that raged over the trade to acquire him, Marc Gasol was a hero. Pretty cool. And thankfully, that was not the end. It very well could have been. After the 2011 lockout, Memphis players were fired up to run it back and improve upon their historic season. But Gasol's contract situation remained unresolved, and he no-showed the first few days of training camp. His teammates were terrified that their employer might wreck the momentum by shortchanging or even trading their star center with only 1 year left on his deal. The quotes from those first Gasol-free days of camp show you how much Big Spain, as Tony Allen called him, meant to the Grizzlies. Allen said once they got Gasol back, he'd be happier than a kid with a Happy Meal. Zach Randolph said Gasol had to come back, and he meant it. Randolph's own re-signing hinged on a management promise to also re-up Gasol. OJ Mayo, he needs to be here. Mike Conley, he's our final piece. Rudy Gay, we need Marc. There are no more Gasol brothers, which is technically untrue. There's a third one, but you get the point. And they got their wish. Marc Gasol re-signed, and things only got better from there. Gasol was a first-time All-Star in 2012. In 2013, he got that Defensive Player of the Year trophy and led the Grizzlies to 56 wins and a conference final. The grit and grind Grizzlies didn't win it all, but they won over Memphis and won themselves permanent recognition. Gasol eventually got traded, no hard feelings, just a rebuild, and he ended up with the 2019 champion Toronto Raptors. And even with another team, Gasol had his championship ring inscribed with the motto of the team and city that meant everything to him. Marc Gasol was born in Barcelona. Marc Gasol broke out in Girona, and that city remains important to him. But Marc Gasol became the Marc Gasol we all remember in Memphis, his adopted home city, the city where his NBA dreams could have died, where his brother's shocking departure could have permanently soured things for his family. Instead, Marc remade himself, redefined his name for a whole city, and made a lot of people rethink a notorious trade. The man once dismissed as nothing now hangs in the rafters as a Grizzly for life. Thank you for watching, and I wasn't kidding about that Patreon. All these people could tell you it's a great resource to stay in touch with us, see stuff before it premieres on YouTube, and access all sorts of exclusive videos and podcasts and more. It's good.